Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books in philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. It's free for viewing, along with the others, at www.philosophypublishing.com. Along with me is my colleague and co-host, Rick Samuelson. Good to see you, Rick.
Good to see you.
Rick is a venture capitalist on the West Coast and graduated from Yale and Wharton. The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine the nature of concepts being used in current media. So this week we're going to kind of get away from that just a little bit. We're going to analyze the speech by President Obama on the 20th of September in this year of 2016, probably his last speech before the United Nations. And he said some pretty interesting things. I agree with a lot of the things in the speech, and I thought it was one of his best. But we've got to go over some of the things because some of it I don't. So to start, he said that advanced nations will need to do more to close the gap with poor nations. And okay, it's a laudable goal, and who can complain about that? Good question as to how to do it, though. I might have some ideas a little bit later here in this little speech. Obama also complained about the 1% at home. The problem of complaining about the 1% is they're the one that creates the jobs. I mean, who ever heard of a poor person hiring people? It's the 1% that create jobs because they have extra income that they have that they can invest, and the reason that they do is because of the principle of the unlimited demand for the good. Everybody always, all living entities want more goodness for themselves, and so they will continue to invest their extra capital and produce jobs, and so really there's no need to complain about the well-to-do because they got their production, they got their 1%, they got their wealth through production and creation of jobs, and their success, and the success will lend itself in the future to more success. He also seems to say that he wants to expand foreign assistance. He cites the expenditures on the Iraq War, which could have been used to help unstable nations. But foreign aid to other governments doesn't work. Stability comes from a stable economy. And so we have to figure out a way to help another country's economy more than just giving away money to the functionaries in another government who put it in their Swiss bank accounts, and you never see it any good. It never develops any good except for in somebody's pocket so that he can retire early. President Obama also said investing in emerging economies should be good for us all. And he's right about that. But the question is, how do we do that? Well, my suggestion is that it's through private investment banking. And the way to do this would be to set up a fund. The government adds money into a fund, and that fund is available to a private banker who would go to local economies in foreign countries and and consult with the private investors there and make private decisions, local decisions, and make investments. These decisions would be with the actual investors in that economy, and they would co-invest. The investor there would be putting in his effort, his local knowledge, and his time, along with the money of the investment banker, and from that, hopefully you get profits. Now, I say hopefully because you're going to give an incentive to the investment banker to make his best decisions with the money, in that if there's a profit, he gets part of it. So this is the best way to invest, to take foreign aid money and invest overseas. I think so anyway. Further, Obama said that he believed in a liberal society, that is one that has a democratic representational form of government with an independent judiciary. Who can fault that? That's a good one. We agree. President Obama also delivered an encomium on the formation of democracies for countries and indicated several good examples such as Botswana and Chile, and I thought this was really good. He indicated that in America there is too much money in politics. Well, I don't think he understands free speech then, because free speech has two portions to it. One, you can go out on your front lawn and you can speak about whatever you want to, or into the park or whatever. But the other one is private property and the rights to private property. So in a free society, we have both free speech and private property. You can't just take private property out of the equation. You denigrate your own society. And the reason I say that is that's the money. If you have money or things that you've produced in the past, you can spend them as you will. And for that, you get the combination. One is really not very powerful without the other. Let's give an example, and you get both on both sides of the street. You get, for example, the president of General Motors might want to call up his representative in Congress, but so may the United Auto Workers president. He may also both speak for hundreds of thousands of people. Both should have the right to address their representatives in Congress. He criticized the Middle East policy and its fundamentalism, which I thought was very good. And he also criticized extremism being exported, which was also good. He was clearly criticizing the Middle Eastern sectarian strife. Good. In his last point, he emphasized that all society should be treated equally. And I think this is a laudable statement. Before the law, all should be created equal. And I think the United States does that better than any other country in the world. He also said that we all have to do as leaders in that we have to tamp down rather than encourage a notion of identity that leads us to diminish others. Unfortunately, I have to disagree here. If you have a person, we all identify with various parts of our lives. You might even do it for a sports team. You might do it for whatever group you belong to. And identity means individualism. And if you tap down all identity, you get communism. So no identity, and you don't get you don't get prosperity. And so also, if you don't have any identity, you also get social equality based on outcome instead of going social equality going in. Just in the previous statement, we were talking about that he emphasized that all society should be treated equally. Yes, before the law, all going in, all should be treated equally. But we can't have equal outcomes because everybody's effort and time and their sacrifices are different. However, he said that in addition, he said that binding the U.S. to international rules enhances our own security. I also can't believe in this statement. Not all American values are harbored throughout the world. And American values are what has presented prosperity to us. And notably, it's all in two documents, the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. And these values are not equal throughout the world. And so I don't think we can bind ourselves to international rules. We can be the leader. but we cannot be the follower. He also said America has to step up to assist refugees. He seems to indicate that as a humanitarian, it is requisite to accept refugees. And it'll be better for us in the long run. Unfortunately, on this one, I cannot agree also. Right now, with refugees coming from the Middle East, we have a severe culture clash, and we can see that in Europe, and it'll come here also. And the reason is that Muslims do not believe in natural rights. They believe that rights come from the Quran first, the Hadith second, and the Sharia. And these are rights that do not exist in our way of thinking, and so this culture clash is going to continue to occur as immigration of this foreign type of culture comes into Western Europe and into the United States. So what do you think, Rick? Do you have any thoughts about the UN speech by President Obama?
Well, I had to take exception to the self-regard, which characterized, his opening paragraph, the high self-regard about solving the financial crisis and so forth. In reality, he's doubled the national debt of the United States. He's presided over an epic area of financial repression by, in the first instance, the Federal Reserve, and in latter instances, this has been taken up by other central banks around the world who played kind of copycat. And the result has been vastly inflated asset prices across many asset classes, and the much predicted recovery and growth simply never happened, and it's still not happening. So if you're going to talk about legacies, these will be amongst his most important legacies. The other legacy he will leave, and is leaving, is frankly chaos in the Middle East. And there were very specific policies on his part that helped to cause this. The most obvious being his failure to enforce a safe zone in Syria. This then led to 1 million refugees or more entering Europe. This helped to precipitate Brexit, which ultimately will lead to the dissolution of much of the European Union as we know it today. Now, the fact that the European Union is as fragile as it is, probably shouldn't come as a surprise when you have such elevated levels of unemployment and when you have so much bureaucracy. It's not surprising that over time people become unhappy, and you have a situation where for most countries in Europe, there's been an utter failure to deliver the kind of economic growth required to enhance living standards, and it simply hasn't happened for years. So I think that's kind of a lost cause, not entirely Obama's fault, but certainly his policies precipitated it sooner than would have been the case. I think his waffling, frankly, about adhering to UN-directed law and binding ourselves to quote-unquote international norms has to be unpacked very, very carefully. The UN's record in terms of keeping peace, making peace, causing peace, furthering peace, intervening sensibly in numerous conflicts around the world is very, very mixed. Rarely has it succeeded without direct assistance from one of the leading world powers, most importantly the United States. The votes that have been taken within the UN to castigate Israel on numerous occasions, and other nonsensical stuff of that nature, are legendary and pathetic, actually. And to sort of bind yourself to that kind of model, which remains unproven, and which, in the absence of direct intervention by more sensible, greater powers, is, I think, wishful thinking at best. And I'm being kind there. I would say it was a speech that was short on specifics, long on idealism. Some of the things were, mom and apple pie in respect of celebrating liberal values, in respect of working in accordance with the laws, in respect of at least admiring the work that capitalism principally has done to enhance living standards around the world. I mean, this is all good, all mom and apple pie, and certainly, unless you live in Venezuela or Cuba or someplace like that, or North Korea, not an issue for controversy. But broadly speaking, in not taking responsibility for the chaos in the Middle East more than he has, and in not suggesting that there are clear instances that he could have cited where direct military intervention or containment, however you want to describe it, could have had immeasurable help and maybe not caused 400,000 Syrians to be killed and still counting. It's now officially a genocide. And so I thought, for example, the Wall Street Journal editorial the other day on Samantha Powers, who decried the lack of involvement by the United States in preventing the Rwanda genocide, is spot on. This is an administration that sat idly by, is doing effectively nothing except negotiating endlessly for ceasefires that never last. And it all looks like a very amateur effort, which is being undone on a daily basis by a combination of the Russians and the Iranians. I mean, even to celebrate that nuclear accord with Iran is ridiculous in light of the fact that it's been documented that they're continuing to support terrorism. So some of the statements really were kind of silly.
Okay. In his final conclusion, that he said that we're going to all try and cooperate, recognize the importance of one another, and globally work together. And I thought that was okay. It was, again, it's emblematic of really what you just stated, long on ideas and short on pragmatic solutions. And I have to agree that overall he did state a lot of great things, but there was no solution to any of these situations that he brought up. So any final remarks, Rick, before we...
Yes, one very firm final remark. He did castigate gently, very gently, China and Russia, and rightly so. But he didn't take he didn't reach the obvious conclusion that we have re-entered a period in international politics, diplomacy, and so forth that our 19th century forebears would have recognized immediately, where nationalist powers are growing in strength. China will soon have a military budget not much different than ours. Russia is, obviously behind China, but a significant power, unlike what Obama's predicted on more than one occasion. And the balance of power in the world, in terms of who can effectively move events, in terms of national interest, is changing, and it is not changing in favor of the liberal European Union, which has become essentially a non-player militarily, the United States and its other smaller allies. It is changing in favor of front and center nationalist powers that are going to continue to assert that power and continue to force the United States into smaller confrontations around the world. It is undoubted that that's where we're going.
Very interesting. Okay, we're going to have to discuss this more in the future programs here on the Philosophical Angle. Rick, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody in a few days.
Thank you.